welcome to this course, this session. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through the business plan basics, and I'm going to talk about why dynamic is key. But I did have a look in the hope of copywriting this. There's a few other earlier instances of this being already sort of put in place, but not in this way. So I'm going to explain why dynamic is a key part of business planning. And at any point, you can chip in and ask questions, and if they're particularly detailed, I may go offline with them, but I'll try best to summarize the answers, or if we need to, we can expand that into other sessions. Now, this session overlaps with the ones on incorporation, also investment, for a whole bunch of reasons that I can go through, and we can explore either this session or later sessions. So I think Laura's really talked through why there's a business. I won't go to that again. If I launch straight in, now I'm going to start with what we're going to hopefully get out of this session. It's going to be, why the heck are we doing these things? Because there are a lot of people that will argue the case for not doing a business plan, and some will argue the case for doing a business plan in various forms and guises. I'm going to talk through the importance of using it to test your opportunity, your projects, and its importance in reducing your cost of risk in doing that. We're going to run through the key elements. Now, the key elements, there are loads of guides you can go on the internet and pick up for what you should put in a business plan and how it's actually structured. Probably the main one I would suggest is what the investors use, which is you may be presenting to at some point in the future. And that goes to the next one, which is looking through it, look for in a business plan that makes it interesting for them. The bit of dynamic is really important because people view a business plan as being a document that you spend weeks and weeks compiling data and facts and figures, and then it goes into a shelf, goes dust, and no one uses it. And that's a really misunderstood view of the business plan. It's more of a concept than a thing in that respect, and it has various names that you'll see in the later slides. So to start with, why the heck are we doing these things? Now, one of the primary reasons we do them is to avoid making colossal mistakes, because the plan, it helps you understand that the project that you thought was fantastic might not have legs for a bunch of reasons. Maybe the market's the wrong market for you. Maybe that there's no real profit in the business. Now, what I find in a lot of entrepreneurs and startup communities, that the people that drive businesses from scratch, they're a very rare breed. They're strong characters, they're dynamic, they're forceful. They have some very strong features that make them successful. That's also a downside, because they can get so wrapped up in a project that they don't necessarily look objectively at what it's going to deliver for them. So having a plan you sit down and spend time producing makes you clinically assess the project from a variety of perspectives, including, is the market there that you can attack? Can you sell into? Is the price right for your service? Is your cost model correct? Do you know it's going to launch the project? What point do you break even? Can you last that long? If there's more than one of you on this project at the start or shortly after, it's critically important that every person in that team sings from the same hymn sheet. So you have to have everybody in a room necessarily and go through this, make sure everyone is clear on what you're trying to achieve. And you argue and debate this until you run out of steam and you get a consensus. It allows you to build the game plan. Now, articulating questions or answer to questions like, what do your customers really want? Where is your market? What will it cost you to run the project? It's really important to have those things together in your head so you can quickly respond to any questions about, what's your market size, and also your team can respond like that in the same manner. Now, in terms of some of the more basic things around things like raising capital, there is a study, there's quite a few actually you can pick up. It's Babson College in Massachusetts. They're a very expensive entrepreneurs private school. Did some research work and identified that if you have a business plan, you will raise twice as much capital as business without a business plan in the first 12 months. This is one stat. I'll go through a few more later on, but I'm not going to try to, by force of persuasion, convince people to have a business plan, but more by just the harsh reality of what you're facing out there as an entrepreneur startup. Oops. Now, It doesn't. There are arguments about not doing a business plan, and I found some quotes online like, no matter what you write in a plan, when you start up in business, everything changes. Things look good on paper, but most of it happens in the way that you think it was going to happen in your business plan. So they're pretty useless to spend time and money to writing down. I meet entrepreneurs day in, day out that had this argument pushed into my face. And you don't know what's going to happen in your business until actually you're in business. And the famous quote from Mike Tyson about everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. I would argue perhaps that Mike had a strategy if he did get punched in the mouth, what would happen next. But people give this argument to me regularly. And often the reason that the plan's important is because you do filter out the things that are just dead in the water before you start. You don't waste time with them. So most often, one of the key reasons you'll find is the market isn't really there for you in your price range, or the market isn't there. If you do the planning up front, you sift ideas that are just dead and going to destroy you over a period of the next year or so away, and don't waste time getting and energy on those projects. And it does help entrepreneurs to understand quite clearly which projects just shouldn't be started, that they're not feasible, and rather than waste time and energy. And there's an additional risk here in that some funding routes you take. Now, there are varieties I'll go through in another presentation deck we've got, but if, for example, you crowdfund, you can get by with a very good marketing pack without much content behind. I've got a project that I'm working with a client who's got a similar challenge of having got funding from Crowdcube that now needs to get to Series A, that is going to struggle because their concept isn't that robust. So a business plan will make you think a bit harder and longer about how do I get this thing to market, how do I grow and scale it, what will I end up with at the end of the day. It makes you look at the operational and financial objectives of the business and the small details like budgeting and market planning. And by doing that exercise of looking at your operational and financial objectives of the business, you look at your target markets, your selling proposition, optimum pricing strategies. You also get clarity around how you're going to sell this thing to your clients. And it's surprising how many businesses that don't really think through clearly how they're going to sell this. They may have a perpetual freemium model. It may be that they're constantly in prototyping stage because the cost of setting up R&D, setting up manufacturing, setting up logistics and warehousing is such a huge task. Without a lot of revenue coming, they can't afford those luxuries. Now, one really important bit, and this probably resonates a lot with Laura and her partner, is that this is a US example, but it applies globally. Some of the key things that cause stress are job pressure, money, health and relationships, poor nutrition, media overload, and we're saturated even more now than we've had before in the last few months and going forward for the next few months ahead of us, and lack of sleep. Now, surprise, surprise, these affect entrepreneurs possibly more than they affect most other people in this marketplace. And having a plan of action that says to you, here's how I'm going to attack this market. Here's what I can see from it, having done my research work. And here are my priorities, because you're going to have conflicting priorities around how do I market, how do I sell, how do I do legals, how do I get the finance model in place, how do I operationally support customers, how does as a business do I automate, and all these factors around your company returns and the rest that will cause distraction. So having a plan helps you manage those stresses more effectively. And perhaps equally importantly, before you get into this project, if you know you're going to be running against the wire in terms of finances, it lets you know that in advance so you can cope with that. And if necessary, get more funding into the project, or you may decide that it's not really the right time and place for you to run a project right now because you can't cope with this level of risk and stress. So if you look at the top right of the reasons that startups fail, and there are loads of analysis on the internet around the reasons for failure in projects. And the key one is market need. Now, I would find it hard to get anyone to say to me that looking in advance at your market analysis wouldn't highlight a lack of market need. So you can pre-plan for this. Running out of cash. Now, having a financial plan explains to you what your budget is, how you're going to spend it each month. And not only that, but it gives you a cash flow. So you know what money's coming in, what money's going out. And any terms on those cash payments into the business, you might have a gap in the cash flow that might cripple your costs going out, including staff. Not having the right team, as another bit on the incorporation that's quite key on this one, is having the wrong people in the business. If you've not looked at the kind of skills you need to have and how those people fit together, then there's a real risk of failure. Getting out competed. If you looked at your market and your competitors, you will know who's out there that's fighting against you potentially as a startup business. And if you have a viable USP that will differentiate you from your market. Pricing cost issues. If you've done a market calibration on pricing in your business plan, you'll know what kind of pricing issues you need to be aware of and how to price your product to make a margin or make it competitive in the marketplace. Poor product doesn't quite fit the need, or it's poorly assembled. Business model and poor marketing, ignoring customers, product mistimed, lose focus. All of these things are business plan elements. So we've talked about, you know, the arguments for doing this. If I then look at some hard facts around business plan success. Now, Palo Alto over in the States worked in the University of Oregon with the Department of Economics a couple of years ago and did some work. They looked at 2,500 businesses, startups. They split almost half in half. About 1,000 had a plan, 1,500 didn't have a plan. Now, the staggering statistics are that nearly twice as many with a plan got a loan. Nearly twice as many with a plan got investment capital in. And a third more of those with a plan had grown their business. And Oregon's summary was that writing a business plan correlated with increased success in every one of the business goals in the study. And I did work in Harvard, also quite recent, said after a research across 1,000 business startups, came to the conclusion that those that write a formal plan are 16% more likely to achieve viability than otherwise identical non-planning entrepreneurs. And that was across about 6-year study horizon. So the harsh, brutal reality is that you can do a project with a scribble on a napkin and you can get funding, you can be successful, as much as, you know, you can write a business plan and be successful as well. If you do the plan, you double your chance of success. And that's not just in terms of getting investment or a loan, it's also in terms of the size of the investment loan you have. Okay, so the next thing down is the elements of the plan itself. And these should be really familiar, but I'm going to go through and explain a bit about how they fit into a bit of a broader context as well. So you have a description of the company, which is really your big elevator pitch. It explains a lot about what your business is doing, what it's trying to achieve, in a few paragraphs. You then have the key bit of most plans, and the kind of investor that you approach. For example, a venture capitalist will look a heck of a lot at the financial model and this piece. If you crowdfund, the focus is very much on the market. It's very much a glossy presentation and less than the financials. So the market analysis is really about where your markets are, and not just what type of market, but where it is geographically. Is it in the UK? Is it in Europe? Is it in Asia? Is it in the US? Do you have a series of markets you want to attack in sequence? You're looking at the size of that market. You're looking at historically what's happened to that market, what's going to forecast, happen to it going ahead. So, for example, if you were looking at a project of autonomous vehicles, where are the key areas of growth? Where are the high friction markets? Where are the low friction markets? You also look at what share you can potentially capture in that market, looking at barriers of entry, because you may have to meet regulatory requirements, you may not. These all factor into your analysis of where that market is. And then you look at who in that market is competing with you. You look at the SWOT analysis, which is strength, business, options, threats. You look at what their strengths and your strengths are, what your weaknesses and their weaknesses are, how do they compete, what the barriers of entry are, and how do you overcome those barriers. Management operations. If you have pretty much a virtual operation, so perhaps you're doing some software, perhaps doing some cyber security offering, then your operational organizational size is going to be quite small. It may be literally sort of sort of a small room with a bunch of laptops and a large cloud storage behind it. If you're manufacturing, you're in a biotech environment, you may have a manufacturing and R&D plant somewhere, you may have a warehouse somewhere else and work through logistics. You may have physical sales on the door to people versus perhaps a click on your website. And your employee structure is pretty important on the management operations piece. Marketing sales. You have to know how to make the world around you aware of your business as a brand and a personality, and your products and services you're offering to those clients and markets. And the difference between marketing and PR is marketing is very much about getting the awareness developed so people know you're there, know your products and services, and you can then use that marketing content to help you close a sale. The PR bit is about how business is viewed, so good or bad. So if your company has a few pushbacks like poor quality, how do you manage and cope with those criticisms? How do you maintain a positive brand image through your company's run? Financial summary, all the really exciting bits around income statements, cash flow reports, balance sheets and liabilities. This is around the hard facts around, do you have the money to buy the stuff you need to run the business? Can you pay the salaries? When you sell a product to a customer, do you have money coming into the bank in a timely manner, or are the terms so onerous that you've got a huge gap between your costs going out and money coming in? And make sure that you do strategy. Businesses can be crippled with high revenue and poor cash flows. So be very mindful of the financial model, and this is the area that if you have an investor on board, they will focus quite heavily on. Okay, so let's just get my cursor down. I'm going to find it where I am. Yeah, okay. So there's a key bit around the plan, which is going to resonate with a lot of people, hopefully, over time as we go through this process. Of Mark Twain, there's very famous quotes of, he apologized for having such a long letter, didn't have time to write a short one. Now, if you try to summarize something, it's really hard without the content behind it. And a business plan's a lot of content, but then you can then summarize from it. If you try to build a summary, and some people talk about doing a pitch deck for investment, the business at the start, it's really hard to get enough detail behind the pitch deck to support the facts in your deck. Build the plan, then summarize it. Okay. Now, there's a separate sheet in investment we're going to go through at a later session time, but some key bits to cover off here are that when you start a business with a business plan, there's an expectation that you will run it with your own funds or friends and family for a period of time until you can get a sensible proposition together. And that sales or income gives you that run rate at the start. And unless you have a massive fund of money behind you in the background, a few million pounds set aside, there's a sort of a real reason that you shouldn't stay in this phase for too long. There's a bit called the inflection point, which is you bootstrap a company with your own funds. You're building a prototype, you get that into some shape, or it may be you build the company to a structure where you can present to an investor. And on your chart bottom right, you'll see that point is a steep climb after the green dotted circle there. And the target is that you will have this business plan and associated bits and pieces ready to present to an investor at that point. Now, the top funding sources chart highlights just where money comes from typically. So the vast majority of businesses with a business plan start with personal savings and credit. They may have friends and family. Very, very few have venture capital. In fact, venture capital, 6% of their funds are used for startups. It's a small proportion. Most of them go in the middle of the S-curve, which is small to mid-sized SMEs, but not large. If you try to stay in bootstrapping or self-funding for a long period of time, there are some real negatives, because it's easy to self-manage your expectations. If you're having to satisfy a hard-nosed venture capitalist, or even a member of the family who's lent you money, or even a sort of an angel, then you have to present your ideas in a way that demonstrates that you've tested that they're going to work in the market. It builds belief in yourself and your team, and it forces you to have set milestones in reporting. And all these things make it very much easier to convince someone with a pile of cash in an investment fund to put money into if you've demonstrated that you've thought through how you're going to launch a business, and you have that rigor of governance around what you're doing at each stage, and you can report back on it. So it also makes you more closely and accurately articulate your proposition. You do it repeatedly because you're having to present to different groups. So you're much clearer about your strategy, how you articulate your product, benefits, USPs, in a sales setting as well. And the seed funding bit, which will come after your bootstrapping, comes from accelerators, angels, and specialized VCs. And some banks, the British Bank do some funding for startups as well, and so some large corporates. But that'll be covered in a separate session. It's really getting your head focused around. The business plan is there for a customer, and that customer quite often is an investor of some shape or form. Okay. Now, if, as most companies do, they target to get to a point where they present to a venture capital fund for investment, it's quite a brutal, hard place to be in the market. And the business plan really gives you a foundation for presenting. And now there are two things that typically you're going to be putting together from a business plan that are used in this investment market. One is a pitch deck, which a lot of people try to jump to from scratch and develop it for a venture capital review. Now, the harsh reality of this bit is that there's a lot of content and detail that a VC will look at, and they will dig behind a pitch deck. They'll ask for information about your financial plans. They'll look for your market analysis. So the pitch deck will give you, if you're lucky, an opening. Now, the staggering reality is that these pitch decks are about 19 slides long. You get 3 minutes, 44 seconds on average, based on 200 businesses giving some feedback on their times to review each pitch deck. 3 minutes, 44 seconds to get their interest. Having got the interest, you have to present the detail behind it. If that detail isn't up to par, you're booted out, and it's very hard to get back in there again. So don't overlook the importance of having that content produced before you summarize it. So same as Mark Twain's famous quote, detail first, then summarize it down. So that bit about the stats around how much time is spent looking at a pitch deck, but they're about 19 pages long, and there's not a huge amount. It's about $1.3 million of funding to do this. So getting that door open is critical. If you're trying to fast track it by not doing a business plan or the work behind it, you will suffer. And I said before, the stats are that, twice as many businesses that have that content get a successful door open with a VC. Now, what are they looking for when you present to your business plan or your pitch deck to an investor? Well, no surprise. You've got company purpose, you've got the problem you're trying to address, the solution you bring to market. Why now is important for your business, the market size that you think you can get hold of in your slice of it, the product you have in some detail, the team behind it is critical. They'll look and say, do you have the necessary skills and experience? Do you have a few grey hairs in the project that can convince me that you have an understanding of the risks and threats involved in going to market? They'll look at your business model and just make sure that it makes sense in terms of the whole cycle of your go-to-market. They'll look at the competition and say, why would somebody buy from you if there's a market out there with existing suppliers to that market? Why are you different? What's special about you as a business? And the financials get a lot of attention with VCs in terms of do you have the numbers to back up? And this is just a pitch deck. So literally you've got financials, you've got 2 slides in here. Now, you may be lucky and blag your way through and get to a subsequent meeting with an investor. They will then ask for the detail behind the scenes. So they'll say to you, give us your business plan, give us your financial models and your market analysis. If you had to frantically go away and scrabble and do this, bear in mind that they're on your backs now because you've gone and got them excited, and you've got literally about 6 to 12 weeks to assemble all this information. They'll also ask you for evidence that you have a track record in here in terms of the governance of the project. You've done some time behind the scenes. Retro building that is a nightmare, and a lot of companies that I sit down and work with get into this huge horrible pile of mess when the VC says we're opening a team room up, and those 10 boxes on the right on that chart become effectively a team room, which is a virtual cloud-based storage area where they ask you to deposit that information. And most businesses then start panicking and start to create this stuff rapidly. Now, if you do have a strong project, regardless of the information being there or not being there, then an investment firm is set up to get the best deal for their money. So they will turn around to you and say, isn't that well thought through? You've not got much financial information in the deck. There's not much work behind this. This reduces your valuation of your business. And if that happens, they get a larger slice of your equity for a smaller amount of money. You will struggle. So sensibly, preempt that by having information present. Don't wait until you have a few weeks, stopping work to have your key people document like crazy and make sure they don't make mistakes. Do it in advance and summarize. So when you're asked what's behind the covers, you've got this content ready to flow. Okay. Now I've talked through the rationale for a business plan and the pushback people give to them, and the customers that are going to be obviously yourself as an entrepreneur to make sure what you're doing is valuable, and your team to ensure they're both on board and they're singing the same hymn sheet. The stats alone on business success rates demonstrate that if you do this, just on stats alone, you'll double your chance of success. If you then, having got through your bootstrapping phase and got either a crowdfunding success or you have a small investment for a VC on board, if you then put that plan on a shelf and leave it, which a lot of companies do both at this stage and also when they get their Series A funding, you're going to have real problems, because an investor for an SME will give you between 9 and 12 months to prove yourselves, and then you have disruptions to the team in terms of people getting moved around. You'll have investors crawling over your balance sheets. You'll have people moved off the board potentially. So you need to think this is a dynamic living thing. Without that level of constant review and evaluation, you can't cope with deviation to your plan if you're not tracking it closely. You can't predict and react to change. We currently have a situation globally, where there's a pandemic raging and businesses are currently panicking and furloughing staff everywhere. What was every company challenged to do many, many years ago? Business continuity plans. Now, how many successfully put those things in place ahead of this crisis? Probably none, because it wasn't going to hit them. The ones that had a plan, at least considered and had a process, a strategy in place for coping with this kind of disruptions to business. You look at scenarios in your plan where you predict if the market investor comes on stream, how would you compete if the market changes? If you have problems with cash flow, how do you cope with it? So a plan helps you react to change more effectively. If you're going for subsequent rounds of investment, then the amount of work you have to produce beyond the Series A funding round, where an investor will look for a ton of data from you, and not just the plans and the forecasts, etc., but also the hard data show you've actually been managing to that plan. So daily, weekly forecasts and actuals, demonstrations of your store of assets, etc., will be asked for. And so if you neglect that piece of the planning exercise, you're going to struggle. So the key bit of the plan is it's dynamic. Don't think of it as a document. One representation of the business plan is that document just at the start that gives the investor confidence they're going to invest in you. An information memorandum which you produce when you want to get investment to a business that's been running is a business plan with actuals in there as well. So you state literally where you currently are. The pitch deck is a summary of the business plan. And having produced the business plan, you need to delegate those elements to your team to run the business. Now, the little chart on the right is my attempt at copywriting this bit of process, which is you start top right. You essentially build and you update the plan. You then test it. So you desk check. You ask questions like, what if this market isn't exactly what I think it's going to be? What would happen? What if my costs go in this direction across here? What if I can't recruit in a timely manner? Having got those scenarios and got confident that what you have holds water, you then apply it, so you incorporate your company. You employ staff. You start buying a product to develop services and goods for your customers. And you put premises down, so you put in perhaps your sort of you put up office sort of location for your staff. You then run and review against the plans each week, month, and quarter. You review against those sections of the plan because they're all common sense bits. A market analysis, your marketing team and your CEO, if it's yourself, should be saying, "This is what we thought the market was going to do. Is it doing it week by week, by month, by quarter, by year? Are there changes? Can we see a drift in the market, or change in the market, or competitor? And where you have to, going back to the plan, adjusting it. And then if your market's changing, it may well impact your sales strategy, your sales forecast. It may impact your operational strategy, your warehousing capacity, your staffing levels, your growth projections. Every part of that plan will be affected by it. So you apply those changes, remodel, and then you structure accordingly. Then you run and review. At some point, you will go for investment. Now, you've now got a bunch of sections of your business plan that are being run live by your business, by your team or yourself, which can be quickly assembled into a memorandum. You have all the content, the reports of meetings, you have all the strategy sessions you've held, you've had customer feedback sessions, all this content that's in that memory, in that store of information, which you can then quickly assemble and you can present. That gives an investor huge confidence that not only do you plan, but you live and breathe that plan. So you present, and the chance of success, we said before, if you've got a plan that's active, it's double the success rate of a business that doesn't have existing plans. I've worked with companies where the investor gives them a list of questions to answer in terms of, do you have information on these elements of your business? And there are huge gaps. And that, again, comes around to investors negotiating with the business owners and the founders to push the price down or discount that investment as an opportunity for them. So having got huge success by demonstrating you have a business plan that you can assemble into a state-of-the-art thing very quickly, the information to back it up is in place in your stores. You get the investment. You then run and review post-investment. You look at any changes. And again, you're under close scrutiny for the next 9 to 12 months. You have to be even more rigorous. Constantly, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, you're sitting down, you're reviewing where you're against that plan, any deviations from it. And then you get to the point where you have to update the plan again because things move on. So again, you test scenarios. You may want to pivot to a new business area. You may be an IT business that's been doing projects and want to go into managed services. You look at the costs that function up. You look at the impact on your resourcing model, your cost base, your cash flow. When you're happy and confident that that model makes sense, you then commit, make the changes, and then apply the org changes necessary to monitor and track that change in your business. Then you run and review. So we loop around this loop repeatedly. So the idea of a business plan being a document that you produce, spend a lot of time doing it, and then you put it into a cupboard to go dust is just a joke, because your investor will look for a plan, but they'll call it something different. As a business, this plan is your business. You're running it day in, day out. So the pushbacks on planning have been, it's an effort to produce. No, it's your business. Without it, you make mistakes in terms of what the project you want to run with. You make mistakes in terms of which direction you take your business. You don't react accordingly to change in the marketplace. So it's done it because it's constantly changing. And the arguments around the plan is static, things change, is ridiculous, because the plan is your business. It's basically where you want to go next with it, includes information about where you currently are to base that analysis of where you want to go next. So don't see it as a document, see it as a core of your business. And in that way, you'll incorporate the right businesses in the right markets, and you've all good investment. Okay, so just to recap, first of all, the cut point of this, I said that I would spend some time on why the heck we do a business plan, because there's a real pushback from, almost half the clients I have push back on business plans. And the importance of desk checking, not only at the start of a project where you're going to invest a lot of time and effort and stress and risk of your own money. That could be your home at risk. It could be your livelihood at risk. It could be a family member's savings at risk. So make sure you test that it's actually a valid project to run before you kick off. So I've tried to cover off why it's important to desk check both before and when you make changes to your business. I've gone through the key elements and why they are so critical, because these are what investors look for in your project, and they are just good business. I've looked at what investors look for in a business and how closely that aligns to that business plan template. And if you spend the time up front developing, refining, and practicing for questions on elements of your business, that investment cycle will be much less painful, much more successful for you. And dynamic, we've gone through that, but in terms it's a constant process. You don't stop, whether you're a startup, whether you're a multi-billion-dollar organization, you're constantly developing that plan. It's a living, breathing thing.